What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, March 4th, 2020, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Pow on a Friday. We have got a lot to talk about today, a lot of stuff coming out of Super Tuesday. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in with your comments, questions, and observations. Okay, Biden wins Texas and 9 other Super Tuesday states. They just announced Maine for him. Sanders took California and 3 more. So as of right now, Biden is the new front runner, but it's less than 100 delegates separate him from Sanders, who's firmly in second place. And already we've had Bloomberg is dropping out, and we're hearing rumors that Warren may be dropping out as well. So basically, Biden has seized control of the Democratic presidential contest with this string of Super Tuesday victories, and everybody's saying, you know, he's the new comeback king, because it was only a few days ago they were saying, well, especially before South Carolina, when they were saying, you know, his campaign's going nowhere, Bernie Sanders is unstoppable, but everybody's been working to basically get Sanders out of the lead, and Sanders is now out of the lead. And, you know, after Iowa and New Hampshire, you know, Biden was on the verge of being written off, but now he's come on back. Still, a lot of states to go here. Sanders could still pull it off. So, again, time will solve that mystery. So he did get California, the most delegate-rich state in the nation. And, of course, he got his home state, Vermont. Tucker Carlson was a little bit less than happy that Biden is the new front runner, saying that corporate Democrats are pinning their hopes on a gaffe-prone Joe Biden. And it's rather interesting. We reported, I think it was on Monday, where some of Biden's supporters are saying that they are concerned about his gaffes and the things he says, like Super Thursday, and that he's running for the Senate. And there was apparently last night when he was introducing his wife and his sister, he got them mixed up and then tried to joke it away by saying, well, they swapped places on him. I don't know. That implies they have assigned places, so he knows turn to the left, introduce the wife, turn to the right, introduce the sister, and they were in the wrong place here. Now, Biden is promising that Beto O'Rourke will be in charge of the anti-gun initiative here. And Beto, of course, wants to take away all guns from everybody. So I think the way things are shaping up right now with Biden in the lead, I'm going to have to grit my teeth and support Trump this November. That's just going to have to be the way it is. I wasn't all that hot about Bernie Sanders, but I'm definitely not hot on Joe Biden. You know, Mr. Creepy Joe, you know, touched the kitties. I don't think so. Anyway, apparently there was a disruption when Biden was doing his victory speech, where some protesters came in with a sign saying, "Let dairy die," which I don't even know what that's about. They were yelling incomprehensibly, and they were grabbed and dragged off the stage by Biden security people. I don't know, little civility, people, little civility here. Elizabeth Warren, poor Elizabeth Warren, didn't even win her home state. She came in 3rd place. She lost that to Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, and that's why we're hearing rumors, still unconfirmed, it's still a rumor, but she may be dropping her campaign. Tulsi Gabbard is piling on the insults, and basically what it is the candidates got a good look at how the nation views them. By the way, Tulsi Gabbard's campaign emails now seem focused on returning her to her office in Congress, so I think she's getting ready to drop out as well. I still think she'd make a great vice president. I really do. Okay, so Bloomberg, good old Bloomberg. The only place he won wasn't even a state, it was American Samoa, and he got those 5 delegates. And that was it for $700 million. So he's dropped out, and apparently his own campaign manager was out there saying, yeah, it's time to quit this. And even though Bloomberg had a huge staff and he was paying them very well out of his own pocket, he's pretty much out of that now. Well, now that Biden is the front runner, Hillary Clinton is doubling down on her Bernie Sanders criticism, saying, I don't think he'd be our strongest nominee. And again, everybody's making their decisions not in terms of who would be the best president for the American people, but who can beat Donald Trump. It's still that we've got to get Donald Trump out of the White House. And, you know, we would run Adolf Hitler if we thought Adolf Hitler would get Trump out of that office here. Now, here's an interesting little story. And this came out of Investment Watch blog. Apparently, Paul Begala slipped up in one of his communiques and says that the reason the DNC is keeping Bernie from getting a majority is they are aiming for a brokered convention. And everyone's talking brokered convention. Bloomberg, before he stepped down, was saying brokered convention was his only path to the presidency. But of course, now he's dropped out. But he could come back for a brokered convention. But I still think it's going to be Hillary. I think Hillary's going to try, if they fail on a first ballot to get a Democratic nominee, Biden doesn't have that majority, okay, then it goes to a second ballot and the superdelegates can step on in and they can vote for anybody they want. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And in other domestic political news here, Acting Director of National Intelligence Richard Grenell is stepping down from his post as ambassador to Germany. He's notified the White House he will resign from his role once Representative John Ratcliffe is confirmed by the Senate in that position. So let's talk about the coronavirus, because however good or bad it is, however potent it is or impotent it is, the damage to our culture, to our economy is very, very real here. So the NIAID director is out there saying, I don't think that we're going to get out of this completely unscathed. Top CDC official tells Congress coronavirus almost qualifies as a global pandemic. But apparently there are such a thing as pandemic bonds that are out there. It's another form of derivative, those gosh awful dang derivatives that just play havoc with our economy. And the instant it's declared a pandemic, the investors in those bonds will lose their money. Can't have that happen. You know, better 1 million people should fall down dead from a non-pandemic than we inconvenience the investment class. And here's the latest breaking news. The World Health Organization is now admitting the fatality rate is higher than previously thought. And even worse, there are now 2 strains of COVID-19 spreading called L and S. And apparently one of them is far more aggressive than the other. And that's the one that 70% of the patients currently have. That confirms that it is able to mutate, and that, of course, is a concern, because if it's mutated once, it can mutate again and again and again. Even worse, it could recombine with something else that's out there, and we could have a real problem. Worst case, real problem. Anyway, the more aggressive type is also the more contagious, which is why we have that 70% offset. All right, apparently there's an estimated 300 to 500 coronavirus cases already spreading across Oregon. So Oregon is now getting this. And apparently this was from OregonLive.com here. Okay, article from Investment Watch blog. COVID-19 has a death rate that is about 34 times higher than the flu. I think that's an overstatement, but everybody's now starting to say that, yes, it does have a death rate, a current death rate or current fatality rate, 34 times higher or somewhat higher. Everybody's hemming and hawing about this whole thing. So you've heard a lot of people try to convince you COVID-19 is not that dangerous because flu kills far more people, which is true, but only because flu has infected far more people. The death rate from the flu is extremely low. Tens of thousands of Americans die from the flu each year. But if the coronavirus spreads all over the planet the way the flu does, the death toll could be far, far higher. This outbreak, at least here in the United States of America, is only in the early stages. And if it spreads like the flu, if it does become airborne because of its mutation, then we're looking at a serious, serious problem. All righty, let's go down here. All righty. GOP House Leader McCarthy is blasting the Democrats for politicizing coronavirus. They owe the American public an apology. And he's blasting the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee for running ads against Republican House members regarding the Trump administration's coronavirus response, which I think pretty much everybody agrees was kind of tepid, and it was purely political and purely about image and narrative control. Plus dumping it all off on Mike Pence, so if it does all go south, Trump will say, well, I trusted Mike Pence to do a really good job here, and Mike Pence has let me and the nation down. So Mike, I don't know, you may not keep your job in the second term if you mess this up. What can I tell you? Apparently Tony Fauci presented a slideshow to Donald Trump trying to convince him that the National Institutes of Health are working as fast as they can on a vaccine, and why it's probably going to be taking a lot longer than the 2 months that Donald Trump has been asking for. Donald Trump made that statement, betraying his own lack of medical knowledge. Alrighty, number of people infected with coronavirus outside China exceeds 10,000 according to the World Health Organization. I just saw a super card on Fox News, 93,000 cases worldwide in 77 countries. That's the latest number. So, 77. This article is saying a total of 10,566 people. So if it's shot up to 93,000, wow. And again, they don't know that much about the virus. They don't have a lot of the baseline on this. It's totally unknown. They're struggling to sort of figure out what it is they're dealing with here. I mean, they know it's a coronavirus. They know there's 2 strains of it now. But estimates of the current fatality rate are all over the place. Estimates of who's got it are all over the place. Anyway, United Arab Emirates is closing all schools for the next 4 weeks. Ladies are getting a little bit of a vacation here. Italy is closing all their schools and universities. The German minister has declared the outbreak a global pandemic. Italy is closing the schools and universities for 2 weeks. Multiple quarantine centers are being pre-planned in California, Washington, and Oregon. They're getting ready for rationing, possibly FEMA trailers as well, loaded with all that formaldehyde. Okay, we're going to take a phone call now. Steve in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Just wanted to share a little bit of humor that somebody had tweeted. Actually, Chelsea Clinton had tweeted that Donald Trump isn't doing enough to stop COVID-19 and keeping the American people safe. And somebody tweeted back that more people have died who testified against your mother than have died from the COVID-19 virus here in the United States. I thought that was a pretty good comeback.
Yeah, that is a good comeback. I like that one. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
You mentioned the 2 different strains right now. It is mutating, and as we expect it will, probably several times over, which would nullify making a vaccine, because by the time you finish it up, if you do the actual trials and take the time, a year and a half, by the time you get that year and a half, what you have is not going to be effective anyway. Kind of like the percentages you're getting now for the flu vaccine anyway, around 27, 30%. It's pointless. It's pointless. And then your pharmaceutical is going to have all this surplus vaccine, and either they'll have to make it a mandatory that you have to take it to be employed or whatever, force the American worker to roll up his sleeve to take the vaccine, or else, or they'll ship it over to some third world country or start something in Africa and send it over there, and vaccinate everybody over there, but they'll make sure they get their money, because if you understand how it works in the pharmaceutical business, the vaccines and all the medications, when they do their trials, some of them don't pan out, and they lost a lot of money, so they must recoup it in some other way, probably pass on the debt to another vaccine or something else, but they'll charge you, and they'll make sure they get their money back. That research and development, they don't lose their money. They pass it on to some other vaccine or pharmaceutical itself. So I don't know. I just think it's pointless. It's pointless. More people have died from the regular flu than this thing here, and I'm going to stand by what I've been talking about. I don't see it. It's not something to be panicking about. And they are talking once in a while about comorbidities, 2 or more underlying health problems, that people who have that would be vulnerable. And I agree with that 100%. 2 or more comorbidities, yeah, this could be lethal for you. But then again, your regular flu is too. So no big difference there. You're still vulnerable to either coronavirus or the flu. So that is what it is. I'm a little disappointed as so many people are running with this in the mainstream media. Of course, this is great news for them. This is advertising dollars. People glued to the TV. But when it comes down to it, people start to say, wait a minute here. Somebody really pushed that button, and they got people all worked up. And then when the numbers come in, they're going to say, based on the total population, world population or population in the United States, they're going to say, what was all the big deal on this? I mean, I don't get it. More people died from this. More people have died from this. It didn't make sense other than it was a great excuse, the best excuse for a tanking economy. Perfect excuse. Won't saddle on Donald Trump's shoulders. It will be blamed on China, and the virus did all this mess, and it's not his fault, and he'll get back in 2020. Still standing by that theory.
Okay. Well, again, we don't want anybody to panic. We don't want anybody just encouraging people to be concerned and be aware and pay attention to the news and try and sort out between all the people over here saying it's no big deal and all these people over here saying it's a slate wiper. Somewhere in between is the truth, and we've all got to work on finding that. And I don't claim to have, the answers on this either. I'm still searching myself.
I agree. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Have a great show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Now, apparently up in Seattle, an Amazon employee has tested positive for COVID-19. This is apparently an internal email viewed by Epic Times. Twitter is encouraging their employees to work from home during the coronavirus scare. Twitter further also informed that the work-from-home system will be mandatory for Twitter employees based in the Hong Kong, Japan, and South Korea offices, due in part to government restrictions, adding that its criteria may evolve as per the situation, and it will further keep the employees updated on the matter. So a lot of people are, in fact, taking this very, very seriously. Poland has just registered its first coronavirus case. The Polish Health Ministry earlier today, confirmed the first case of coronavirus in the country. According to authorities, the patient is quarantined in a hospital in the western Polish city of Zielona Góra in stable condition. The infected person came to Poland from Germany, which is having their own problems with coronavirus. Hey, over in Flushing, New York, they had a man walking down the street with a hospital mask, and he just passed out on the sidewalk. And sort of reminds us of some of the videos coming out of Wuhan, where people were just falling over in the streets. So, again, not trying to cause a panic. Don't want you to be afraid, just aware and concerned. That's all we want. Now, Donald Trump is donating his entire fourth quarter salary as president to the effort to confront, contain, and combat coronavirus. It's a nice gesture, Trump. It's nowhere near enough money to actually accomplish all that much. Fortunately, once you do a declaration that this is a threat to the nation, FEMA can come in with some $30 billion in emergency funding. We're going to take a break for commercials. Join us on the air. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And a reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network is having a fundraising drive, and we need your help to keep this station, keep this network on the air. Otherwise, we're going to have John Stedmiller out by the side of the road with a cardboard sign saying, "We'll broadcast truth for food." So the postal address where you can send a check or money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Okay, let's go back to the phones here to Phil in California. Aloha, Phil. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. I'll be sending a contribution shortly to you, so
thank you.
I want to let you know that. Mike, also, I love the Dorian Gray reference from yesterday's show.
Yes.
Very highfalutin of you.
Well, you know, I don't like using outdated pictures, and neither does Claire. But that one that's at my website.
You got some culture in you, Mike. You got some culture in you, and it's showing. Mike, I have a few points that I want to go over. I hope you'll allow me the time.
Sure.
Yesterday, Joe from Tennessee, he let us all know that he admires Trump for his support of nationalists in Europe and Israel. I imagine the nationalists in Europe, I can think of Viktor Orban in Hungary, but perhaps the leaders in Poland as well. Israel, okay, we're talking about Zionists. That's what Jewish nationalists are. Let me remind our friend in Tennessee that these Zionists are both war criminals and perpetrators of espionage against the United States. I mean, this,
yes,
in terms of the latter, their treachery has been going on for the past decades, and it's continued through the Trump administration. I think Joe has a short memory. You know, there was that little story about Israel placing spying devices, these stingrays, near the White House in order to engage in surveillance of cell phones. And what did this ardent nationalist, President Trump, do or say to Israel? Nothing. So if Joe can honestly say that Trump is a nationalist, he has a strange and unique idea of what a nationalist really is. I mean, yes, all former presidents have bowed down to Israel, but Trump, through his decision to move the embassy, recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, occupied Syrian territory, openly condone illegal settlement activity, and kill General Soleimani, he has taken that obeisance to a whole new level.
Yes, he has. And I think it's going to get worse in the second term.
Yeah, I mean, I understand Reagan did. I think it goes back really. This bowing down to Israel goes back to LBJ. I think Kennedy was the only one that really had balls when it came to the Israeli state. But Mike, also Paul from New Jersey, and he's a very interesting fella. And I think the other guy who called, he kept calling him a bookworm. Well, you know what? I'm a bookworm too, so I'm proud to be a bookworm. So I'm with Paul. But Paul referred to the lowlife Erdogan in his weaponizing the Syrian, they may be Syrian or not, these refugees against Europe. Europe not supporting his escapade in Syria. But, you know, I don't have any sympathy for Europe. They made their own bed. Now they have to lie in it. They went along, or they permitted their political leaders to go along with Washington and London's regime change wars that devastated these countries, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and left the people with no alternative but to flee. There's nothing left in their countries. They've been bombed back to the Stone Age. So the Europeans, I believe, collectively are acting against their own interests. In the case of these regime change wars and the belligerent policy toward Russia, through the sanctions, the use of their territory for war games, placement of missile defense systems that can easily be transformed into an offensive first strike capability, the Europeans are really they're harming their own economies and putting at risk their own survival.
Yeah, they are. They've hoisted with their own petard.
So
again,
I really have nothing. I really have no pity for these people, for the Europeans. You know, I guess. I mean, like here in the U.S., I guess they're very. They're more interested in trivial things, but at least the U.S. we have separation. You know, we have the Atlantic between us and where these regime change wars are taking place. But the Europeans, they're facing the They're facing this refugee deluge. So, they have only themselves to blame.
Well, remember, it's not the European people who did this, it's the European leadership. And the
European people are allowing the leadership to get away with it. I mean, Paul Craig Roberts said it best when he said he was working in government, and he asked one of his mentors who was in government at the time, why did these Europeans go along with the U.S.? Why are they such puppets? And his mentor told him, bags of money. It's that simple. Bags and bags of money.
All right. Well, Phil, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. Back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And Fox News is now reporting there are 5 new cases of coronavirus in New York. So as it is right now, yeah, it's relatively few people compared to the world population or the U.S. population. The concern is if it's growing exponentially and can't be stopped, what it might be somewhere in the future, like say in 1 or 2 months here. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here to Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, what did Bernie Sanders call Netanyahu a racist reactionary? Well, I'm
reactionary
sure that's what
racist.
That's what Bernie would probably call me, too. I mean, I'm a white nationalist, but unlike some of your other callers, the guy before and the other guy in New Jersey, I'm a pragmatist. I'm not like a Trump derangement syndrome purist. I mean, I didn't like the fact that Trump is so pro-Zionist, but he's not lying. It's not like, if you want to go truth in advertisement, he said he was going to move the capital to Jerusalem. There was no doubt he was going to be friendly to Israel. And I just would, like I said the other day, that I support nationalist and populist governments, and in Israel, Netanyahu is more of the nationalist. I mean, he's strong borders. He protects his people. I don't like it. I don't like what Israel's done over the last 50 years, but they're a reality. They're in this world, and if you want to get power in this country to close the border and do a lot of good things that Trump's doing, you're going to have to deal with the reality. I mean, and the fact of the matter is, Israel is a bit of a feedback loop for very wealthy American oligarchical Jews. So when you think that Israel does something, is it really Israel doing it, or is it with the tacit okay of the U.S. government and the oligarchical Jews in this country? I've known Israelis over in Israel, and they say, we don't run our government. It's run by a big, rich American developers and casino magnates. They own, they think it's fun to have 4 or 5 pet members of parliament follow them around when they go on their trips to Israel. So I think there's a lot of that going on. And when you talk about the seditious and the attacks and things like the USS Liberty, let's face it, Johnson knew about the Liberty. They were part of it.
Yes.
So yeah, the Israelis do a lot of dirty work, and a lot of it's with the tacit approval of the United States. I mean, 9/11 the Israelis were involved in, but you can't tell me that the American government at the dark levels wasn't involved in it up to their eyebrows also. I mean, they get the Israelis to do some of these jobs because they know they won't be criticized by the press and the media and it'll kind of tone everybody down to go along with the story because you don't want to embarrass the Israelis, hence another Holocaust, blah, blah, blah. But, another incident of Trump derangement syndrome, and I really wanted to call you and discuss this because I've heard people call in about it before, and that is this whole thing about Trump being a chicken because he's a draft dodger. Now, just because you dodge the draft isn't because you're scared physically and you're a chicken. A lot of people, I personally would, if there was a draft, I wouldn't want to go in the service, and it's not because I'm scared of getting shot, and I'm scared in that regard. I just don't like being told orders by people. I don't like to be ordered around. It's that simple, So there's a lot of people that dodge the draft because what's the point of it? You want to go in there and eat crappy food and be bossed around and told to go attack some hill or, kill somebody? I mean, there are people that, they like killing people and they want to go to get drafted. Or the other thing about it is to call them a chicken is just petty and childish in my view, because first of all, if Donald Trump or anybody like Donald Trump did get drafted, do you really think they're going to put him in a humping around as a grunt in the field? No. It'll be like Buttigieg. They'll be walking around going to cocktail parties or be on the military press corps or, working, my buddy got drafted in the Marines and first thing they do is they put you through a test. And if you're real smart, you get a lot of options of what they want to do. He went into Air Corps for Marine Air for repair technician for the airplanes. So this idea that Trump avoided the draft because he was scared, physically scared, he's a chicken, right? He's a chicken, It's really ridiculous and childish. And, if you really look at the facts about what happens if you are drafted, he would be, you get college educated guys that come from academies and stuff. They're not going to, unless they want to go and they'll go in as an officer. That's, so this whole attitude, I've heard so many people talk about him being a chicken. He didn't want to get drafted. Well, once again, a lot of people don't want to go in the Army, and it's not because they're physically cowardly. I mean, to tell you the truth, to be the president of the United States has about 10 times the likelihood of you dying in office than you would going to serve in Vietnam. It's about 10% of our presidents get shot. I think a little less than 10. I think 9% or 8%. Because out of 45, there's been 4 that were shot and killed. So, if your chances of going in Vietnam, I think there was like 3 million people that went to Vietnam and maybe 60,000 got killed. That's a lot less statistically dangerous than being president. So this whole thing about him being a chicken, there's a lot more reasons not wanting to be drafted or go in the military. Like I said, for me, I might like hunting people down. I don't know. I just don't want to be bossed around and told that if I say to somebody, go F yourself, I'm going to end up in the brig. Is that rational and reasonable? Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what's also rational and reasonable. A lot of people resisted the draft in Vietnam because they felt the war was wrong, that we didn't really have any business being over there. Now,
good for them.
I was very lucky. I didn't have to face that choice because I had an occupational deferment. But I felt the war was wrong, and I was very glad that I wasn't. I didn't get involved in that.
No, I agree. There's a lot of reasons for not wanting to be part of the draft, and that's my whole point. I don't think Donald Trump is a chicken at all. I think that most reasonable people would try to avoid the draft. I mean, why wouldn't you? Unless you, for some reason, and there were a lot of ways out. And even if you got in, if you tested well, you had options. My buddy, they told him he could either be an airplane mechanic or be a first lieutenant in the Marines, and he said, "I'll be an airplane mechanic," and he said, the class of 12 first lieutenants, he said only 9 of them got killed because it's a very dangerous place to be a first lieutenant, because that means you're going to be on the ground. And if you're not shot by the Vietnamese, you might get fragged by your own men because that was happening a lot over there.
That was a big problem, yeah. Absolutely. So, plus, there were all the exotic diseases people were picking up. I had a friend who served in Vietnam, and he came back, and I was in college with him, and he'd come back with some illness, and he wouldn't talk about it. Apparently, it was all very hush-hush, but he died halfway through that semester, and we didn't know what it was he'd had, but, he was very loyal and obedient to the end. He never talked about what it was that he'd picked up in Vietnam.
It could have been Agent Orange, too, right?
Could have been. Could have easily been.
Yeah. So, like I said, that's I just don't like cheap shots, and I think calling Donald Trump a chicken is a cheap shot because it takes a lot of courage to even run for president of the United States. To tell you the truth, put your family through all that for a billionaire like him. So anyway, I'd like to respond also to that guy Phil in California. This guy Soleimani that they killed, or Soleimani that got killed. My whole take on him getting killed is, if he got killed and blown up when he was in Iran, it would have been really wrong. If he would have got killed in Italy or in Rome, in England, I would have been like, that's outrageous. But the guy was in Iraq, and he was in Iraq stirring up trouble. So, he's not like an innocent guy out like having a meal in Switzerland, He's down there stirring up crap. So he's, and he's a general, and it's a war, and he got it, And this outrage I hear, it's like, oh my God, the end of the world. Oh God forbid. What is this? there is terrorism and war going on there. This guy should have stayed in Iran, and he would be alive, breathing air right now. I don't think he was part of any Iranian delegation to Iraq. He was sneaking around. So this whole attitude, everybody, I don't understand it. How many people so defensive of this guy? When I first heard about him, it's going to stir up a lot of trouble. And then I said, well, he was in Iraq, so screw him. I mean, he's up to no good. And I just hear so many people humming and hawing and so much sympathy for this guy. Well, let's face it, it was I think it probably not a mistake, but at the same time, he's no spring chicken, as they say. He's no little innocent, bystander. I was a lot more upset when I'd hear Obama dropping bombs on wedding parties in Afghanistan with the drone attacks and stuff. That really gets me. But this guy Soleimani, the outrage I've heard about him, it's enough. The guy was up to no good. If it happened in Iran, I'd be with you. But once again, all this outrage, I don't remember hearing. I mean, I'd hear it once in a while, but I never heard as much when it was Obama, supporting ISIS and killing hundreds of thousands of Syrian Christians, and which has basically come to an end now that Trump's in. It really is. There really is a thing called Trump derangement syndrome. I've seen people that generally are very rational and pragmatic just go off the deep end. We're not getting our wall fast enough, so I'm going to support Bernie, who doesn't believe in walls at all. How's that? How's that for some logic? But I hear it, and I just don't understand it, because Jeff Rentz has been a big disappointment with that. I mean, the guy is it's like his pride is the better Trump does, the more hysterical he gets, because I don't understand it. So. I think I'm rational and pragmatic. Maybe I'm the one that's on the deep end. I don't know, but I just I try to be logical, and I can't follow some of this stuff, But anyway, thanks for hearing me out. And once again, if anybody listening can donate to you guys. I donated last week, and I'll probably donate again next week. And I want to thank you, Mike, for this forum for everybody.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the donation, and thank you for the good words here. We're going to let you go and switch over to Paul in New Jersey. Aloha, Paul. Welcome to the show. Thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Hey, Michael. What do you think about throwing coronavirus parties for those who minimize the coronavirus? What do you think about that, Steve Elkins? What do you think? You and Rush Limbaugh, Trump, you can all get together, and since the coronavirus isn't a big deal, we'll expose you to coronavirus. All right? Not a big deal. It's not so bad. All right? Now, listen, it obviously is somewhat bad.
I spin the bottle.
Right. Now, at LAX, I've told you about how the airplanes are still coming in from Asia, from South Korea, Japan. And I'll admit this, I check up daily to see if the flights are still coming in. And as we know, and I guess this might be part of having Trump derangement syndrome, which I'm working out with my therapist, Donald Trump said in January that the flights were going to be stopped coming from China. So I checked with what's going on at the flight arrivals in Los Angeles, and there was, I think, one flight from China, so they're mostly reduced, but there were plenty from South Korea and Japan. Now, what they do there, this is kind of interesting. At LAX, I noticed a pattern, and it said the planes coming in from Asia and some of these hot zones are landing at it says, instead of a gate, it says TBIT. And then it turns out that stands for Tom Bradley International Terminal. So it seems like they're segregating them and having them come in through a separate terminal, which might have stricter or better FLIRs, the infrared cameras to check for elevated temperatures, and then lead them into the United States. But
over in South Korea, they're actually taking the temperature of every passenger before they're allowed to board the airplanes.
Right, but as we know, and it's well established, that they can be nice in normal temperature and then flare up after they arrive and when they're in a crowd.
True.
In the United States. Yeah. And this is the failure of the approach and just maintaining the flights as normal, except somewhat more segregated. But I will acknowledge they're at least sending them into one terminal in LAX. But what I wanted to mention...
Have you been to LAX?
Yeah, once or twice, I think, when I actually flew to China, actually, back in the 90s.
Well, basically, the Tom Bradley terminal is another terminal, and it does have gates. It's the one that's set up with customs and, passport control, whereas the other gates are for domestic flights only.
Okay, but usually they wouldn't have that TBIT terminal on a lot of those flights, so maybe I'm mistaken, or thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, any flight that's coming in from another country goes to the Bradley terminal. They're not allowed at the other gates.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, what I wanted to get in touch down on is yesterday, with some of my detractors. I would just like to remind my detractors that the fact is that, when I hired Donald Trump to be my president, we remember at the time he made his promises, and I believe that it is our duty to hold his feet to the fire. The people who apologize for Donald Trump are actually not doing their nation a favor, because they're aiding and abetting Donald Trump and his obvious propensity for procrastinating. Because if you notice, remember, how long did it take to fire those people? We heard about, what were they, in the Justice Department or in the one of the departments where he fired 70 of them? It took him 3 years. How long did it take him to end the war in Afghanistan? 3 years, remember?
Mm-hmm. Well, the war in Afghanistan may not be ended. That's something we're going to be talking about in a little bit. Right.
So to compare, like some of my detractors say, well, who are you going to vote for? Joe Biden. Well, now that it's not Bernie, it's Joe Biden or it's Donald Trump. Well, so in other words, I have the choice between the turd Joe Biden and the sugar-coated turd Donald Trump. So I guess I'll take the sugar-coated turd then. But the fact of the matter is, this was the time to choose better men than even Donald Trump, because there are better men out there. They're just not running for office. They don't have the money. They don't have the fame. They don't have legions of cheerleaders. So I just like to say that the apology. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Paul, thanks an awful lot. We got to let you go and take a break from commercials. Back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go right back to the phones to Andy in Texas. Andy, thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind today?
Oh, hey, Mike. No, I take some exception to a gentleman that called 3 or 4 phone calls back where he said the European people get what they deserve because they didn't do anything about it. Well, they were disarmed. They had nothing they could do about it. So I would like to let's revert it back to where we're at now. We're in the United States of America. We're armed. We are the freest nation in the world as far as arms go. We're not free at all, but we're not doing anything about all the stuff they're doing to us. So this gentleman he's putting pressure on the people over there. Well, you get what you deserve and whatnot, but we're sitting over here and we're not doing anything. You know what? We're doing this, what we're doing right now. We're having conversation about it. We're talking about it. We're alerting people. We're letting people know what's going on. And yet we're not doing anything about it. This drag queen story time. This California is talking about, and I'm going to say it, I'm sorry, it's a family show, but they're talking about anal sex with young kids and whatnot. And we're not doing anything about this. We're not standing up. There's not people. We should be taking our guns and walking up to these places and saying, dude, you're just wrong. You're simply wrong, and we're not going to do this. But we're not doing that. Okay, so the gentleman, 3-4 phone calls before, he's saying that these people got what they deserve. We getting what we deserve too, because we're not standing up. We're not doing anything to stop what's going on in this country. We're talking about it, cool. And guess what? It's not your job to yours or anybody else's job on the radio to organize us and get us together. But I mean, there's so many things that should put us together right now, and we should be rushing every government agency that has anything to do with making laws, and we should be pushing their butts out of this organization. They have no reasons, no rights, nothing. So the Constitution is there, but it's null and void. And we can see this completely because it is null and void. It's simply null and void. It does come into play when they want to impeach a president, and we heard that several different times in the impeachment, that the Constitution says, the Constitution, and the Constitution, you know what I'm saying? But
Yes.
when it comes to you or me going into a courtroom, the Constitution doesn't mean diddly squat.
All right. Well, listen, Andy, thank you very much. I still do not favor the idea of violence in the streets of America, but we're going to let you go for station identification. More phone calls after the top of the hour. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go right back to the phones here to Mark in Florida. Mark, thank you for waiting. What's on your mind today?
Thank you, Mike, for letting me in. Just an aside from my topic, a pragmatist, the ends justifies the means. And an example of pragmatism would be a cop putting a bullet into you to save you from that marijuana cigarette in your hand. The ends justifies the means, and this is just a terrible place to be. But on to the coronavirus, where the symptoms are slurred speech, staggering, and vomiting.
Okay.
Corona.
Yeah. Oh, those poor people over at the Corona Beer Company. I mean, they're just. I think it's utterly ridiculous that people who were drinking Corona beer have quit that brand because the name is on there. I mean, all Corona means is crown. That's what Corona means. And the idea that they think that the beer has something to do with the coronavirus is utterly ridiculous. But it illustrates how this panic and fear can really cause some tremendous irrationality in the population.
Yeah. But as far as the virus goes, I don't know if you've ever seen, I've never seen a picture of the actual virus. And I wonder if these people are diagnosed with it, do they get to follow the doctor that took the blood to the testing facility and actually show them that virus in their blood or their saliva or anywhere else? I think it's a wonderful false flag is what I think it is. I think they're calling symptoms a virus and just to scare people to death, I think.
Well, there's a lot of people who are really genuinely sick, and there's a lot of people who have genuinely died, and this is clearly not the normal seasonal flu.
Well, but we get no, like I said, if I was being tested, I would want to follow that doctor into the test room and show me how they do the test and show me the actual virus in my actual body fluids to prove that I actually have it.
Well, the test
and we don't get that.
The test for coronavirus doesn't involve actually, taking blood, putting it under a scanning electron microscope and actually seeing the virus. It's an antibodies test, because when you get any viral infection, your body starts to produce new chemicals, and they're testing for the presence of those chemicals. So it's an indirect confirmation.
Okay. Well, I'm just baffled by it. Amazing how all of a sudden now it's in Atlanta. Now it's like I don't know, is there some madman with a suitcase running around town to town just spraying stuff in the air and getting, is it chemtrails? It's just baffling how these things are just taking over with all the advanced science and technology and medical abilities we have. It's just amazing how any such thing could possibly ever happen.
Well, I think it shows that we're not quite as advanced as we'd like to imagine that we are.
I agree with that. Thanks for letting me in.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch over to Keith Rogers. Aloha, Keith. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I had a couple things for you. The problem with presidents today that don't serve are they're the ones that are first to send boys off into wars, and that's a problem. But Michael, do you remember Cary Grant in the movie Father Goose?
Oh yes, I remember that.
Do you remember his plot in that, or his script in that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so Ho Chi Minh, the OSS, had supplied him with radios and light arms, and he like Cary Grant in that film Father Goose, had reported on Japanese troop movements and also retrieved U.S. pilots shot down by the Japanese. At the end of that World War II there, Ho Chi Minh was still in contact with the Pacific Fleet. Excuse me, fight my flu my own. But on September 2nd, 1945, in front of a crowd of hundreds of thousands, he declared Vietnam an independent nation. He used the words that familiar to all American school children, which were all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among them is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And of course, this was their breaking away from France.
Yes.
Now you can look at McNamara's Morons. That as 100,000 U.S. boys fled to Canada, they drafted 100,000 low IQ boys from the hills of Tennessee and stuff like that, in which also there is ample video of those soldiers who, in return or rotation, came back that went also to Canada, which was, I think, around 23,000 or so more, that in their interviews, they said that they realized what they were doing down there was war crimes.
Yes.
And this is the problem here. However, I have a web page up that deals with this entire thing, which is also CENTO, which is the Baghdad Pact, which was signed into a treaty back then, which gives the U.S. the ability to stay into a certain area. And this all goes in line with the NSC 68, of where the U.S. had to constantly keep pushing other countries into the arms of the Soviet Union to justify their ungodly arms buildup there. But there's a video on there from David Schobruin, who gave a speech in New York City on April 10th, 1970. And it's a 40-minute video explaining exactly how the Vietnam War got off and the lies that were told. And I mean, it's a good video. In one of those things there, he says there's no need to burn the draft cards and stuff like that, but it's time to wash the flag. And this is because of whether Donald Trump says that Nicaragua is an extension, what they call it, a national security threat, or Venezuela is a threat. This is empire, just like with France, UK, United States. These are the ones that, like Rome, are trying to keep their little colony states together. Just like when you listen to Amy Goodman's old speech there, or newscast, on what happened in East Timor, where the CIA supplied a list of people to be killed. Upwards of 900,000 people were killed between, I'll say, just Indonesia, East Timor. I mean, and this was a checklist given off by the CIA to bring in these Western-backed corporations, because MacArthur and those guys had their geologists and stuff like that mapping out the minerals and stuff. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's no different down in South America, where they go in there and they level off force. They put in massive cattle ranches for firms like McDonald's. I mean, even Noam Chomsky says McDonald's and McDonnell Douglas don't actually go together, because there's no need, because the place is captured already. But these are these U.S.-led wars. But when you listen to the heartbreaking stories of these veterans that have come back from wars, I sent a link earlier there of a veteran from Iraq confronting Biden, and of course
Yes, I
Biden
saw
plays
that.
the victim there.
Yes.
Yeah, but this is what goes on like that, and every time that someone wants to, and vote one of these guys in like that, you have to realize their voting record, and these wars are all based on total lies.
Well, I'm sure that the people in Congress know what the real reasons for the wars are. The lies are simply being told to us to go along with it, to manufacture our consent.
Yeah. Like I say, everyone that was involved during the Contras is in power today, and that's confirmed now. So, I mean, it's just if you don't realize exactly how much has gone into the fighting in El Salvador, Nicaragua, I mean, and the same thing with the immigration problem we have, that the CIA has destroyed country after country. That article on the LA Times there about up until the year 2000, the U.S. has interfered in the election process of 81 governments. And then, of course, we're supposed to sit here and worry about Russia, forget what Israel's doing in this country, and Netanyahu brags about like that, but these are democratically elected governments. Whether or not Venezuela is a socialist one or what like that, it does not affect the life of an American like that. They're thousands of miles away. But the governments use this, and of course, then you listen to those like John Bolton that says, well, yeah, it's for the oil and U.S. corporations. Just like Syria, it's for the oil. Just like Iraq, it's for the oil. Has nothing to do with that. And Americans are sending their boys thousands of miles away to die for nothing. And then under Trump, 122 Air Force have committed suicide in 2019. In 2018, 57 Marines have committed suicide, 22 in special ops. That latest article from Germany listed that 60,000 veterans have committed suicide since 2008. I mean, these guys are waking up to the fact that they have been used as pawns.
Well, that's what Henry Kissinger described military men. They're just dumb, stupid pawns to be used for foreign policy.
And Mike, I'm a little bit younger than you, but being around for decades in the United States here, and you look at the economy, the crumbling infrastructure, you can replace government after government like that. Nothing gets better. So, have fun, I guess, like that, trillions of dollars out there blowing up other countries. Look at Raqqa or look at Mosul. They're just like vivid images of what Dresden looked like, or the 67 cities in Japan that were firebombed, These are all done in your names, Anyway, that's all I had to say. You have a good day, okay?
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Jim in Brooklyn. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
A couple of things, Michael. I start off with something just like a neutral word history on corona. As you mentioned, it means crown. There are other words that also have this similar meaning. Of course, the Hebrew word for a corner is called a keren. The word corner comes from the Hebrew word keren, like the keren kayamet Israel is the horn of plenty. Anyhow, I wanted to mention something else. We have, on the same subject, sort of humorously, we have a neighborhood here in Queens. It's called Corona, Queens, and of course that song by Paul Simon, Rosie, the Queen of Corona, right?
Yes.
So now we know that the generic term for viruses is corona, a general term, and so they gave this term, they gave it that name, COVID, whatever they call it.
COVID-19.
Distinguish it. Right.
Well, coronavirus, let me interject here. Coronavirus is a class of viruses, but coronavirus does not apply to all viruses. There are filoviruses, for example.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But I was going to say that since this is a special one here, with the number, what you said, corona, we should call this one Rosie because it's the queen of corona. Now, that's just
I got in enough trouble calling it the Wu flu.
Yeah. Now, on a more serious note, I sympathize with what Mr. Rogers just said. I 100%, I am aware of those high suicide rates. I know some Vietnam vets, homeless ones, when McNamara before he died, he came to speak at the 92nd Street Y in New York City, and they came there and they heckled the hell out of him. And these are people that were sleeping on, on top of radiators and things like that. They were a couple of steps maybe away from suicide, not because of their condition, but because, like Mr. Rogers said, these people are terribly guilt-ridden because of what they have done. But I wanted to mention the most important reason why I called up. Are you familiar with Bonnie Faulkner and the Guns and Butter website?
Yes.
Okay, she's fantastic. She came on today in New York after Amy Goodman. She had a 1-hour interview with a man by the name of Nick Bryant. Have you heard of him?
No, I can't say that I have.
Okay, Nick Bryant has a book out called From Franklin to Epstein. It's not Benjamin Franklin, but a person similar to Epstein who was involved in pandering off minors to D.C. politicians.
Franklin scandal.
Yes, and he had an article published in Vanity Fair this past year, I think July of 19. And he had a 1-hour interview, and it is startling. It is amazing. It is nonpartisan. He gets all kinds of people involved in this, and he's well documented. And if you ever wonder why things don't get done, he brings out tangentially, without directly accusing him, that Attorney General Barr is involved in these things also, and there are the whole system. When we say swamp, it is so bad. It is so bad. It's unbelievable. Nothing can get done, including we can bring it into these wars also. That the previous caller mentioned. His name was Keith Rogers.
Yes.
That he mentioned these wars and this what he called the military-industrial complex is protected by all of these things. The congressmen and just the whole it's just so overwhelmingly terrible and evil. It's unbelievable. And I
Eisenhower warned us.
Yes, and I urge everyone to go at this Guns and Butter and see the interview called From Franklin to Epstein. It's an amazing interview. 1 hour. It has all kinds of links on it. Also, when you read this, you'll understand why nothing, and even why these things with the FISA documents, it probably never get done. Everything is so entrenched on both sides of the aisle, up, backwards, left, right, and sideways. Nothing will ever get done unless something radical and massive happens.
Well,
and that's what I have to.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And I've often wondered if maybe this kind of extreme behavior, molesting a child, is a rite of passage to the upper levels of our government, because it seems everybody you look at, they're really out there. And I got a funny story about Brit Hume toward the end of the program. All right, well, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're going to get back to the news. We're still talking about COVID-19. Over in Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei is dismissing the coronavirus outbreak in a new video. He even calls it a blessing. And obviously, he's doing anything he can to diminish the seriousness of what's going on in Iran. But Iran's health minister is claiming that they have 60,000 cases of COVID-19. And to do that, BBC has published leaked video footage from Iran showing body bags being piled up. COVID-19 victims. And apparently shows bodies piling up at a local morgue in Qom, said to be the victims of the country's spiraling coronavirus outbreak. Located 140 kilometers to the south of Tehran, Qom is believed ground zero for Iran's epidemic, and crucially is a popular place of Shia religious pilgrimage. So anyway, All right, JP Morgan is telling thousands of their workers to go ahead and work from home as part of a test of a virus contingency plan for closing domestic offices should the coronavirus spread. As part of the test, managers have requested that about 10% of staff across its consumer bank work remotely as part of the plan's resiliency testing, which has been codenamed Project Kennedy. Nobody's sure why JP Morgan picked that name, but that's what it's called, Project Kennedy. And since JP Morgan's consumer bank has 127,137 employees, the most of any of the firm's divisions, that means over 12,000 workers will be working from home for the foreseeable future. Well, Claire and I are lucky we already home office here. Now, Michael Bloomberg, there was a video that went out about him, apparently was eating a pizza and licked his fingers, which you're not supposed to do. He's basically ignoring the coronavirus guidelines. He touches the pizza, he licks his fingers, he touches the coffee pot, and then apparently he's just not following the rules that you need, because you don't know who else has touched the pizza, you don't know who else has touched the coffee pot, and you're not supposed to be touching your face. All right, we got to take a break for commercials here. We've got another call waiting on the line, and we will be right. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Well, I got a beef with Paul from New Jersey, Mike, and as a lifelong protector of the endangered species known as turds and sugar-coated turds, they wanted me to relay a message. They wanted me to relay a message to Paul that they are offended, they're lumped in with Trump. I don't know, man. Mike, it's just, we got a virus going on. This whole back and forth. It's, it's like with Nancy Pelosi with the Democrats or with the Republicans. And like I said the other day, and there was on RT Crosstalk with Scott Ritter was on there. And if anybody watches that, it's called Coronavirus something. He says it's all political, like here between, Trump or Pelosi or the Democrats or Republicans, and there's no unifying message. That's the problem. I just see that as hampering pretty much efforts, I believe. Because if you look in China, like I said the other day, they have the ability to close a 20 million people city. So can you see that over here? How many people live in New York? Can you imagine them trying to close up New York? Can you see the people wanting that? It'd be impossible with our government, But look at the government we got now. It's just infighting. So I just see some crazy stuff, going on with, Well,
we just get Bane from, Batman Returns. He shut down Manhattan pretty solidly.
Yeah, where's he at now? Because,
Batman beat him up.
That you had a caller, Mike, who seemed like he was trying to say he doesn't, like he said, we're so technologically advanced that this is the virus. I mean, some people think this is not real, or it's like being not, like it's just being used. Did you take that from some of your callers? Like, they believe that? Because Rush Limbaugh who called it a hoax? Was it Trump or Rush Limbaugh or somebody?
No, Trump did not call it a hoax. He said the Democrats fanning up the fear was the hoax.
It was Rush Limbaugh might have been trying to say, or this or that about it not being as bad as it is. But
yeah, that Rush is saying that.
Yeah, but Mike, you got to realize, like you said, if somebody is sick and they touch like that credit card machine in the store, you got a 50-50 chance, right? When you touch it, when you're right behind them of getting this thing. Now, right at that point, you might not get the serious illness, but you still might get the mild symptoms. So I mean, this thing is not a joke. Just because you don't get sick or your wife don't get sick, but maybe your next door neighbor will get sick because maybe he went to New York on business and come back. You know what I mean? So this is not like a joke thing. You know, like I just see some of the listeners might not think this is a serious as, you know, it's not a serious thing because they look at the Democrats as using it, you know, like as a weapon. So then it must not be serious. Don't do that. You know, don't just because the Democrats are making, you know, using it as a political tool, thinking this is like a hoax or a joke, because it's not. You know what I mean?
Okay, well, let me tell you where I'm coming from on this, and I'm going to have to take you through the next commercial break. Okay, it's not serious now. And if everybody is exercising the appropriate cautions and care, we can keep it from getting serious. But denial is actually more dangerous than the hysteria that we're seeing surrounding the coronavirus. And if people are not taking precautions, if they're not being careful what they touch, you know, Bloomberg licking his finger is a good example. If you're not being cautious about it, it could be serious. That's kind of where we are with this.
And what about, like, did they even tell us how long this stuff stays on surfaces? Like this particular virus, you know, like what's the length?
9 days.
It stays on. That it stays on a surface?
Yeah, for 9 days is one number I heard. But again,
So
the one thing we know for certain is that we don't know, because the numbers are all over the place. I've had people call in who say that the virus particle will die in air in just a few minutes, and the virus particle by itself, yeah, that's true. But when somebody coughs or sneezes, the virus particles come out surrounded by little tiny bubbles of phlegm. That's what they mean by aerosolized. And the phlegm gets on a surface and the water evaporates out of it, but it leaves this little sort of dried phlegmy spot. And if you touch that and brush your finger over it, then the virus can get into you, especially if there's a cut on your fingers.
What happens if you touch a bottle of soda in the soda aisle in the refrigerator section of the store and put it back? That means that'll still stay on there?
I think in the refrigerated section, the virus would probably die much more quickly. We got to take a break for commercials. Stay on the line. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And right now, Mike Pence is giving another briefing on the coronavirus, and I was listening in on it, and it's mostly about, these are all the things we're going to do, and we're cooperating with the governors of the states, and we're passing a funding bill, and, you know, nothing really substantive that I can see, so we're not going to cut away to the audio like we did earlier until they've got something worthwhile to say. He did say it's affecting older people more severely, which we knew, and people with underlying medical conditions, which we already knew. All right, so getting on back to Dustin in New Jersey. Dustin, just sort of pick up where you left off, please.
So I'm looking, it says Italy's got 2,502 people that are, I guess, infected, and they got 79 deaths. They're closing all schools and universities and advised to cancel all events. So if this is a hoax, one hell of a hoax. Yeah, you know? I mean, and in the U.S., Mike, like, remember, people, this has been here for weeks. They're saying up to 6 weeks before anybody actually probably, well, I can't say everybody who didn't know about it, but so this is why we're going to have more to community spread, because it's been here and there was really nothing being tested for 6 weeks, right? So those people were coming and going, right? Like flying around and touching people, shaking hands with people, touching credit card machines in the store. You know, I mean, this is how these things spread. You know, and I'm like, at that point, I want to leave it at that for the virus. Real quick, I want to talk about Erdogan. I know it was talked about yesterday, I believe, about Erdogan's a strong man, but for that somebody who called who says they're a bookworm, there's a book called Weapons of Mass Migration, and Erdogan's actually he's holding a pretty good bunch of cards right now because look at what he could do to Europe, you know?
Yeah. He's already trying to do it.
And remember last time they bribed him, didn't they?
Yeah, but he turned down the most recent bribe.
Well, didn't they give him euros last time? He should have asked for gold. You know?
Well, you can still buy gold for euros.
That's true. But he's a strong man, and Erdogan's going to do what Erdogan's going to do for self-preservation. And that's all I got to say, Mike. Have a good night.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Emmerich in Vancouver. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I don't know. I send you a site called World Meters Info.
Yes.
About the virus. Very good site. It does give you a lot of information. And it's kind of, it says it's live, so if you click on it, it does update all the time. It's got the latest information, and it is serious, but if you look at the U.S. site, CDC, and they estimate the influenza, and it's 2019-2020 influenza, from October 1st, 2019 to February 22, 2020, they figure there's 32 to 45 million flu illnesses.
Yes.
And 14 million flu medical visits, 310,000 to 60,000 flu hospitalizations, and 18,000 to 46,000 flu deaths. So,
yes.
How serious is this?
Well,
I mean, it's not a joke, and I understand that, but compared to regular flu, it's nowhere.
Well, that's because it hasn't infected 45 million people yet. But, clearly the rate of infection is on an exponential curve.
Yeah, but the time frame, like if you look at the site, the time frame that they're tracking, it started, there's a chart, January 22nd. So January 22nd, and we're past February, right? So yes. We're over a month, and we have got altogether 95,000. That's a long ways from millions. And recovered, it says 51,000. The active right now is 40,000. So how bad is it really? I mean, people die all the time.
It's not
How many
bad.
people die in?
It's not bad now. Okay, it's like I said a little while ago on the show. It's not serious now. It's not bad now. And if everybody follows the usual precautions against, wanting to, touch things and lick fingers and whatnot, we can keep it from becoming bad or serious. But if everybody just says it's no big deal and they go on about making these same mistakes, it could potentially be very serious somewhere down the road.
Yeah. I just wonder in that same time frame, from January 22nd till now, how many people died from heart disease or cancer? How many died in car accidents? Versus the 3,000. So.
Well, how many died from medical mistakes? I mean, you said it yourself. People die every day. Doesn't mean we have to like it, and doesn't mean we have to welcome yet another lethal pathogen in our midst here. We're just saying, right now you are correct. It's not a big, serious problem, but it potentially could be, because now the World Health Organization is admitting that the current kill ratios are actually higher than the flu. We know that the coronavirus has HIV protein spikes, which means it binds much more aggressively to cells that it's trying to infect. And we know the R0 is higher than for the flu. So there is a potential there, and we need to be aware of that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So from the numbers that it shows here, it's 3,254 deaths. We're not quite 100,000 infected. So that's, well over 3% deaths. I don't know what the ratio is in influenza. We'd have to do the math. I didn't do that. So 46, so 18,000 into 32 million. Yeah. So I don't think that's 3%. No. Yeah, you're right that it seems higher deaths, but anyways, I just think that it's getting a lot of attention versus where we got other things that don't get attention, like the regular.
Well, let me ask you a question. Remember the Titanic, when it first hit the iceberg and everybody said, no big deal, the ship is unsinkable. I mean, and of course the captain and the crew were saying, get to the lifeboats, get to the lifeboats, get to the lifeboats. And people were convinced, no, there was no reason to go to the lifeboats. We're in the same situation here, okay, where we're not sinking right now, but do you want to wait until the water is up to your upper lip before you say, oh my goodness, we're in trouble?
Well, okay. Well, time will tell which way it's going to go, and it's all we have to do is give it another month and see if the numbers increase or stay the same or decrease. And that will definitely say. And also, this World Meters Info, I don't know who really actually puts that out, and is it accurate? I mean, that's the trouble with nowadays. We don't get good information. Yeah, so garbage in, garbage out, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the phone call, and we're going to switch. All right, we're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike? Glad to see you back, buddy.
Thank you.
Are you feeling better?
I'm feeling much better. Thank you.
Thanks. You look a lot better, you know? There's no chance you had the coronavirus, is there?
No. I had something called PMR.
What?
It's PMR. It stands for polymyelitis rheumatica. And it's non-contagious. Okay. And they're saying in about another 5 months it'll be gone completely.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. But anyway, as far as coronavirus goes, again, we're run by an incompetent government, starting with the president. If I was the president, and I would have done this weeks ago, I would have shut down both the U.S. and the Canadian border. I brought our troops home from all these places they don't belong in anyway. I put them along the Canadian and the Mexican border. I'd also brought part of the Navy back and put them, to help the Coast Guard, so nobody comes in or out of this country. And I would have shut down all air flights to the United States and outside the United States. Anybody coming in from any foreign country, forget about China, no foreign country, they would have to have like a 30-day quarantine before they're allowed back into the, to go home. That's the way it should be done. It could still be done, but it's already, unfortunately, the cat seems to be out of the bag now. So Trump shows again, he's too weak. He has no idea what he's doing, and he plays up to Wall Street, the interests of Wall Street. I don't care about the stupid stock market. I care. The President of the United States is here to defend the safety and health of the American people. That should be his number one priority, not the stupid stock market. Not to keep these billionaires happier with phony money, phony printed money and phony interest rates. That's not his priority. That should not be his priority. His priority should be the safety of of the people of this country, and he's not doing that. The man is totally incompetent. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem any hope for any kind of decent leadership in the near future. Now that I see with Biden winning, I just made a YouTube video telling, well, I know he's probably not going to see that, but suggesting to Bernie Sanders that he should step down immediately and throw his support fully to Tulsi Gabbard, including his delegates, and put her back into the race. At this time, they couldn't deny her to be on the stage. Because that's about the only hope I see. That's the only person right now running, including Trump himself, that has an idea what she's doing, who's intelligent. I kind of look at her right now as she could be the American version, female version, also of Vladimir Putin. Okay? I don't believe she's corruptible. I think she knows what she's doing, and she really would put the American people first. And, Trump, forget it. I mean, he's showing again how incompetent he is. And, that's about it, Mike. I'll take your answer offline, okay? And glad to see you back.
Again, Trump has already dumped this onto Mike Pence, who's back speaking, and we're going to go to the White House feed here after this next call. So let's go to Nancy in California. Aloha, Nancy. Pardon me. What's on your mind?
Hey, have you heard about Dean Koontz, the author, and the book he wrote back in 1981?
Yes.
Okay, so if, it just seems a little coincidental that he would put that in his book about this man-made virus, bioweapon that's made, and it's called Corona, and it's described so similar to what's going on today.
I don't think he called it Corona in the book. I thought he called it Wuhan
yes,
400.
He
did. Okay, my mistake.
So, according to this article I'm reading, he'd written about the coronavirus, and let's see here. Let me just scan through it. So it's, it's an American, let's see here. I should have reread the thing, but the book is called Darkness Dwellers, or The Eyes of Darkness. And apparently he gave the virus the same name, only adding 400. So it's called Corona, but he adds Corona 400. And apparently the United States, and I don't know if it's the United States or if it's pharmaceuticals. Anyway, there have been some viruses cloned or patented under that name. So it seems to be a bioweapon. I guess you've covered that already.
Yeah, I think it's an accidentally released bioweapon, and I think it was a work in progress. They hadn't quite got it finished yet. But there are literary coincidences, and again, going back to the Titanic, a few years before the Titanic sailed, there was a novel that was published in Great Britain about the world's largest ocean liner sinking on its maiden voyage, and the liner in the book was called the Titan. So I don't think somebody went on out and said, we're going to deliberately sink the Titanic just so it lines up with the book.
Who knows how things work, but, there were three prominent men on there, three of the most wealthy conservative men that went down with that ship.
Yeah, but I think the iceberg is to blame for that one. Along with incompetence with the crew, they'd misplaced the binoculars. So the guys in the crow's nest were just trying to see everything with their naked eye on this dark, moonless night with a very smooth sea. And now, of course, there's new evidence they may have been fooled by a cold water mirage. Anyway, Nancy, we're going to let you go, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to take one more phone call, go through the commercial break, and then we're going to start the White House feed from this press conference. Okay, Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good day to you, Michael. You had a couple of callers, train show. One guy was calling about Trump, but before I go there, the other guy was calling about people dying of disease. Well, we got 5,830 some Americans getting murdered by illegal aliens, so I don't know if that counts, but that's what the angel mothers and fathers are talking about today. They're going to start running ads, I think, for this election because it looks like Trump's going to go up against Biden, Sleepy Joe, Creepy Joe, whatever you want to call him. And that's another, that one guy, Mark, saying Trump hasn't done nothing. Well, Trump's been, for 3 years, he's been saying, let's build the wall. He's not doing what he should do, but he's doing better than any other. If no Democrat would ever do it, you think Sleepy Joe or Bernie Biden or Sanders are going to do anything? They're going to flood this country another 40, 50 million illegals, Michael. But the guy, Mark, he's off the chain when he says that Trump ain't doing nothing. Trump's for 6 weeks ago, I remember him saying, we got to stop these people from coming in here. But Michael, I'm going to ask you a question. Maybe you can answer this real quickly. Did they ever find a cure for Tay-Sachs disease or sickle cell anemia?
I don't know that they did. They found treatments.
They found treatments, but they never found the cures for Tay-Sachs. And I believe Tay-Sachs is only related to one group of people, correct?
Yeah, the same with sickle cell anemia.
Okay, what group is Tay-Sachs?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember. I know that sickle cell anemia affects the black population.
I think if I'm not mistaken, I heard that sickle cell anemia is from the Sephardites. Sephardite. I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that.
All right, Tom, we got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. When we come back from commercials, we're going to go to the White House feed from the press conference on coronavirus. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, and we're going to put the calls and we're going to put the calls on hold, and we're going to cut to the White House feed for this news conference on the coronavirus.
We just completed another meeting of the White House coronavirus task force. It's been a very busy and a productive day here at the White House. President Donald Trump has no higher priority than the safety and health of the American people. And the President has directed our task force, employing the full resources of the federal government in full partnership with state and local health authorities, to make that priority a reality. As I stand before you today, we have more than 100 coronavirus cases in the United States. That is counting domestic cases and cases of coronavirus of Americans that were returned from China or the Diamond Princess. I'm pleased to report that most of those who contracted coronavirus within our care are continuing to recover. But sadly, we received word today that another American has passed away, and their family has our deepest condolences. That being said, thanks to President's strong leadership and the professionalism of all of our federal agencies, Health and Human Services, CDC, and state and local health officials all across this country, the risk to the American public of contracting the coronavirus remains low. To be clear, if you are a healthy American, the risk of contracting the coronavirus remains low. But it is still a good idea to engage in common sense practices that are always recommended this time of year. So, as someone who has a mother who's 87 years of age and who has married kids living around the country, a brief tutorial on prevention for yourself, for your family, and your loved ones. It's a good idea to stay home when you're sick. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Cover your cough or sneeze with tissue. Throw the tissue in the trash. Clean and disinfect frequently. Wash your hands with either a disinfectant or with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. And let me say again, as we've said before, there's no need for Americans to buy masks. And the common sense practices that I just described are all available at cdc.gov. Today we had a series of meetings here at the White House and on Capitol Hill. We met with executives of the airline industry, the executives of commercial labs, executives of nursing homes. And our team also met with the Republican and Democrat caucuses in the House of Representatives. And we were pleased to learn that just shortly ago, the House of Representatives passed a federal funding bill by a virtually unanimous margin. It'll now move to the Senate. And the legislation implements the President's vision to ensure that not only do our federal agencies have the support and resources that they need, but also that our state and local partners have their support. And in my conversations with governors all the way through this afternoon, I know they're grateful for the bipartisan spirit that has characterized this funding bill, and we'll continue to work through that process. As President Trump said, we're all in this together. He deployed a whole of government approach, but thanks to the President's leadership, it has actually developed into a whole of America approach. And the meetings today with industry leaders is a reflection of that. As Dr. Birx will indicate in just a few moments with some of the data that we're evaluating from around the world, it does appear that the elderly are the most vulnerable, especially those with serious health issues. At the President's direction, as a result, Seema Verma will describe that the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services has issued new guidelines for nursing homes nationwide. We have raised the bar regarding infectious disease control at our nursing homes. And in addition, Administrator Verma will explain how we are going to focus all of our inspection resources for the foreseeable future on compliance with infection control standards. Generally, we monitor our nursing homes for abuse and neglect, but at the President's direction, we're going to focus exclusively on ensuring that those who are in nursing homes, people operating the nursing homes, like many of the CEOs that we met with today, are complying with the new standards to keep our elderly safe. The President also met today with airline executives, and I'll reiterate, as the President said, our profound gratitude to our partners in the airline industry. They have worked with us in, as we say, flowing Americans through particular airports, the screening. We're working very closely with the airlines on contact information. If a person is tested as positive for the coronavirus, we're working with the airlines to get all the information, not just about that person, but about who they sat next to and who else was on the flight. And the President and I are very grateful. As we announced yesterday, I'm pleased to report that as of yesterday morning, in addition to the travel ban from China, we've suspended all travel coming in from China. We've suspended all travel coming in from Iran, and even foreign nationals who visit either one of those countries are barred from coming into this country for 14 days. We also established a travel advisory for Italy, portions of Italy and portions of South Korea over the weekend. But even as importantly, as of yesterday morning, we fully implemented a screening process. All direct flights from all airports in South Korea and Italy are now being subject to multiple screens before passengers board to come to the United States of America. The State Department worked very vigorously to bring that about, and we're grateful for the cooperation of the governments of Italy, the governments of South Korea, as well as our airline partners in making that a reality. Finally, with regard to testing, we had a meeting today that gave us great hope for great progress in the near future on expanding testing across the country. We have a ways to go yet, and I'm pleased to report, as we've been able to convey to state governments, governors around the country, is that thanks to the good work of the FDA and Dr. Steve Hahn, who's with me here today, now all state laboratories, all university laboratories at the state level can conduct coronavirus tests without any additional assets or resources from the federal government. They have the FDA approved test. They can conduct the test all across the country in all the states. Beyond that, as we announced through the efforts of HHS, 2,500 kits of tests are going out this week. That of 2,500 kits, including tests, has gone out this week. That's roughly 1.5 million. A test that will be available this week. We'll continue to build on that number. But perhaps most significantly, thanks to Dr. Birx's efforts and leadership, we brought together today at the White House the leaders of all of the largest commercial laboratories in this country, companies like Quest that have vast capabilities, logistics and testing capabilities. And we were pleased to report today that they have created a consortium to share information and to share resources, and literally have told us that as they go through what is called the validation process on testing, that by next week, individual companies will be able to do, as they said to me, thousands of tests of coronavirus if they are needed and required, and many, many multiples more of that in the not distant future. Our objective here, as Dr. Birx raised with the task force, is we've got hospitals in affected areas and those that are requesting that have kits. We've got universities and state labs that now can perform the test on a requested basis. But our objective ultimately and as quickly as possible is to have tests made through these commercial laboratories and commercial providers that your local doctor, your CVS, your MedCheck is able to have a coronavirus test. And that isn't there yet. We're working to make that a reality. But again, it's one more example. It's not just a whole of government approach, it's a whole of America approach. Whether it be our nursing home industry, whether it be our airline industry, whether it be our commercial laboratories. I can speak on behalf of President Trump and our entire task force when I say we are profoundly grateful for the spirit that's being reflected by companies all across the United States of America. Grateful for the leadership at the state level, and the American people should be confident that that spirit of partnership is going to continue to drive this at every level as we work our way through dealing with the coronavirus in the United States. With that, I'm going to recognize Dr. Deborah Birx for her comments.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Good evening. Over the last 12 hours, we've been able to receive information both from South Korea and Italy, adding to our China information. And it's as we thought. The elderly and pre-existing conditions have a more serious illness when confronted with the coronavirus. Reassuringly, in South Korea, no one has died under 30. This is reassuring to us, and the median age in Italy was 81 of those who succumbed. Those who became ill, the median age was 60. So we find this data reassuring, but it also has really caused us to focus on the Americans who might be most vulnerable. So we're focusing resources, attention, and all of our capacity to ensure those who have pre-existing conditions and those who are elderly have access to the best prevention and treatment options. The prevention options flow right through all of us to ensure that we have good protective hygiene for our elderly clients around the globe. Thank you.
Thank you. Seema?
Thank you. And as you heard, because of the risk for our nation's seniors, we are doubling down on our efforts. Today we put out 3 memos. One was to hospitals about triaging and placement for patients with suspected or confirmed coronavirus. We also put out some information to nursing homes about limiting visitors to nursing homes, monitoring staff. And then finally, we put out some information to our state surveyors that are going to be surveying our nation's nursing homes and hospitals around infection control. So all of that information went out this morning.
Very good. Thank you, Seema. CDC, Bob Redfield.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I think what I'd like to highlight today is to first echo what the Vice President started with when he was giving the American people the advice that he did as he went through, that we do have listed out on our CDC website, cdc.gov. It really is very important. It's very pragmatic about washing your hands, 20 seconds of soap and water, or using the other disinfectants. Obviously training yourself to cover your sneeze or cough, either in your elbow or with a Kleenex that you will dispose of. I think these are very important things. Working hard not to touch your face. I think the most important thing for many of those individuals that might be a little type A, if you get sick, stay home. You're not helping your colleagues by going to work sick. And again, I think these are just very pragmatic. We've listed them. They're absolutely no different than what we ask the American public to do for flu. The second thing I would like to do is continue to get the help from you to get those messages out. The one that's the most important that the Vice President also talked about is the role of masks. We need these N95 masks for the healthcare workers that are taking care of these patients. We do not recommend them to be used by the general public. And again, you all, if you tell the stories, are able to be great communicators of that, so that the American public gets accurate information and gets good guidance from your experts that you'll reach out to for your story. So that's what I would ask you to do. And I'll reiterate what the Vice President said at the beginning, that although we're continuing to see new community cases in this nation, the overall risk to the American public at this time still remains low. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Fauci. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Just to reiterate what was said by several of our colleagues here, is that we make policy recommendations and analysis of what we're going to recommend based on accumulation of data. Data is very important. What Dr. Birx just told you is data that underscores some of the things that we've been telling you. You know, when you talk about risk, you know, risk is something that's vague to people. And we've said many times, if you talk about risk of infection throughout the country, it's a low risk. If you talk about someone who is infected, and we do have infected people in this country, you've heard that from Dr. Redfield. You understand the situation that we have in Seattle. If you do get infected, if you're infected as taking Seattle as the microcosm of that, it is exactly what Dr. Birx said. The risk of getting into difficulties is very heavily weighted towards people with underlying conditions and people with the elderly, where the young people, and there will be an exception here or there, the same way we see with influenza, but the risk for a young person who gets infected to getting into trouble is really low based on a lot of data that's coming out of foreign countries, particularly out of China.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Fauci. Dr. Carson.
I want to thank the Vice President and the President for very aggressive and careful leadership. Now, I was involved throughout my neurosurgical career with a lot of very, very complex cases and dealt with a lot of renowned physicians. But I must say that the people on this task force are extremely impressive, have been considering all the various different possibilities, outlining scenarios for all the possibilities that can occur. And it's very comforting, and recognize that the risk to a healthy adult still remains quite low, largely because of the aggressive actions that have been taken and are continuing to be taken every day. And just one last point, and that is the pharmaceuticals, who normally are rivals, have worked together voluntarily. Wouldn't that be a great lesson for the politicians?
Great. Quick informational announcement. I'll be traveling with many members of the task force to Minnesota tomorrow. We'll be visiting 3M, which is poised to literally begin manufacturing millions more masks for our healthcare workers. And then we'll be traveling on to Washington State, be meeting with Governor Inslee and with his health team to ensure that the full resources of the federal government are being brought to bear in support of their efforts to protect the health of people across the Seattle area. So with that, let me start right here.
Thank you, Vice President Pence. I have two questions, one about Washington and then one about Florida. I'll start with Washington. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that meeting came to be? Will Secretary Azar be with you? Is that a meeting that the governor asked you to come there? Can you explain?
I've spoken to Governor Inslee, who I know well from our time in Congress together several times since being tapped to lead the White House effort on the coronavirus a week ago.
Okay, we're going to fade away from the feed now that they're into the question and answers hymn, and we're going to take a phone call from David in San Francisco. David, thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind?
Howdy, Michael. Howdy, Michael. Yeah, you remember after 9/11, people got pretty suspicious of Homeland Security and what they were really up to. You know, do they ever really protect us, or do they just sneak around and, snoop and whatnot? So I figure with the current budget that they've got, they could fix the drinking fountains of America. Every little small town and park and whatnot have got a bunch of broken drinking fountains. Now, what would give America better homeland security than a working drinking fountain, right? And in the case of this here disease, if you're sick, you're going to want some clean water. So I would bet that if Trump actually wanted to get something done and a project, he wants to build a wall, well, how about fixing the drinking fountains first and get them working? Because if this is a real epidemic, you're going to want clean water. And if you got a bunch of homeless people that can't get a drink, they're going to be sicker faster. And the fact they're homeless means that they spread, right? So it's like no-brainer. Fix the drinking fountains. And not only that, you know, of course, Flint, Michigan, or Puerto Rico. I mean, Trump is an insult to civilization, you know, as that goes, because he's intentionally not fixing Puerto Rico. They got hit by Category 5s twice, and he's still not fixed it. He's demanding that they pay back the grants. It's amazing how sick he is to Puerto Rico. But Flint, Michigan's an obvious one. If he wants to win Michigan, he better fix the drinking fountains in Flint, Michigan. So, yeah, that's my take on it. You there?
You're muted, Mike. Mike's muted. Hang on.
All right, I'm sorry about that. My concern with that is that little valve that's on the side of the drinking fountain. If somebody with coronavirus touches it, they're going to leave virus particles for the next person who uses the fountain. And the same thing with the water that they don't swallow. It splashes on their mouth and goes back into that little bowl underneath there. There are going to be virus particles there as well.
Well, you're not saying that we should never fix drinking fountains, right?
No, I'm not saying that. I think
you want clean water. You know, clean water is the issue here. Are you saying that the rest of America can't use a drinking fountain anymore because something might happen? You know, that's preposterous. They better fix the drinking fountains. That's the first thing. Because if you have an epidemic and you have dirty drinking fountains, or you got broken drinking fountains for that matter, you can't get or polluted drinking fountains. You're just going to have the epidemic spread worse, right? Fix the drinking fountains. Straight out of the Homeland Security budget. They've got it stacked up there in the back corners, all the stolen money they've got. They got to fix the drinking fountains. If America is going to come out of an epidemic, if we're going to give foreign aid, we better give working drinking fountains.
Well, it's an interesting point of view, and I'm going to thank you for the phone call and get back to the news here. So have a good day. Anyway, the National Health Service in England declares coronavirus a level 4 incident, the highest degree of emergency, as 12 more people in Britain are diagnosed. And Big Four accountants do little lockdown their London office over a positive worker. And by the way, there was just a banner on Fox News saying 2 more confirmed dead here in the United States. All right, we're going to go back to the phones to Nancy in California. Aloha, Nancy. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, don't usually like to call back twice in one day, but I just couldn't resist responding to the last caller who's thinking that President Trump should fix the drinking fountains.
Yes.
That's a state issue. We think that the federal government gets too big, and then people like that want them to do everything.
Okay.
Ridiculous. Okay, thank you.
All right. I'm not sure if David wasn't very tongue-in-cheek with all of that. Anyway, getting on back to Great Britain, the British police are being told to only deal with serious crime in the event of a COVID-19 escalation. They're even talking about deploying the army if necessary for crowd control. So Great Britain is definitely taking this very, very seriously. Now, we've all talked about the movie Contagion, and it's a good movie. I don't like the way they bash the blogger. The blogger character is a bad guy, and I don't like that for obvious reasons, personal bias, what can I tell you? Apparently, before COVID-19, it was Warner Brothers' 270th most watched movie. It's now in second place. And apparently, this is the movie that stars Gwyneth Paltrow, Matt Damon, and Kate Winslet. And it was released almost 10 years ago. Back in December, it was in 270th, and now it's number 2 this week. It's also the 10th highest rented on Apple's iTunes store, alongside 2019 Oscar winner Parasite and Frozen 2. A year ago, it didn't even make the top 10. So people are watching that movie. They're trying to get an idea of what's going on here. Now, that being said, the pathogen described in the movie Contagion appears to be much more virulent and serious than what we're dealing with here. But the same storyline could play out over a much longer period of time. And again, those who are saying it's not a big deal because of the numbers compared to ordinary flu, or for that matter, the number of witnesses against the Clintons who've been killed, it's not serious now. But if we don't take common sense precautions that are being recommended, it could be serious down the road. And that's what we have to keep our eye on. It could be a problem later on unless we're proactive now about maintaining our distance, about not touching our faces, about avoiding contact with surfaces that have a lot of traffic on them. All right, so we've talked about coronavirus enough here. We're coming up here on a commercial break, and we'll be back to talk about the international news after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Turning to the international news, it looks like the peace deal in Afghanistan is already toast. I mean, they signed it last Saturday. It's only Wednesday. And today, the United States conducted an airstrike against Taliban fighters in Afghanistan's southern Helmand province. The first such attack since the troop withdrawal agreement was signed. Now, the Taliban fighters were actively attacking an Afghan National Security Forces checkpoint, so the U.S. is claiming this was a defensive strike to disrupt the attack. Well, sorry, Donald, you didn't get your peace deal to ride into the election with here. Now, Assad is joining forces with Libya's Haftar to combat Turkey, and the East Libya government will open a new embassy in Damascus. Okay, over in Israel, once again, hundreds of illegal Israeli settlers are storming the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and apparently this happened on Monday. 226 Israeli settlers stormed the courtyards of the Al-Aqsa Mosque while accompanied by a squadron of the Israeli police. Now, in 2016, protests erupted at the embattled area after Israeli settlers during the last 10 days of Islam's holy month of Ramadan in contravention of tradition. The Islamic Endowments Department of Jerusalem reported the intruders wandered brazenly in the courtyards of the mosque. And we're still seeing the fallout, if you will, from that horrible situation where Israeli forces killed this Palestinian and then literally dragged his body away hanging on the blades of a bulldozer. And basically saying this is a way that they have of preventing the Palestinians from having a proper funeral for their dead. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Paul in Montana, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mr. Rivero, when Mao took over China, the first thing he dealt with was the huge number of mandarins, or I guess bourgeois, or what fits. And over the years, they came back in huge numbers. And was the Cultural Revolution another cleansing? And is this coronavirus going to be used as another cleansing of the mandarins or the bourgeois? And what class is most affected by it? And I'll be listening to hear what you have to say.
Well, the problem is we don't actually know because nobody has provided any demographic data broken down by ethnicity. And you're absolutely right. China embodies the descendants of several formerly independent kingdoms that were united under Qin Huangdi, the first emperor of China. So we really don't know. All that we know for sure so far is that the elderly and those medically compromised are particularly at risk. Again, I do not think this was deliberately released. I think it's an accident. Somebody dropped a test tube over at that BSL-4 lab. Okay, so another big problem they have over in Palestine is the Israeli security forces will simply steal money from the homes of the Palestinians. And apparently Israeli security forces stole thousands of shekels from Palestinians in Al-Zawiya in the south district of the occupied West Bank. And apparently, according to WAFA, around 50,000 shekels, that would be worth $14,500 US, were seized during raids that were carried out overnight. The Israeli authorities claim the money has been confiscated because the Palestinians supported acts of terror and received the money from unknown sources. As a result, the soldiers who take the money are rarely charged with theft. Okay, there is a non-governmental organization in Israel, the Movement for Quality Government. It has petitioned Israel's High Court of Justice to block Netanyahu from forming a government amid his corruption trial. They're arguing that Prime Minister Netanyahu should be barred as he faces several court counts related to corruption charges. Now, he's going to have to form a government in conjunction with Benny Gantz if he's allowed to, but we'll see what the High Court says. And finally, getting back to the poor condition of our military, and this story came out of Sputnik News. Apparently, the U.S. Navy, in its rush to build ultra-lightweight, faster ships, has inadvertently created a Navy that is increasingly unable to fight in stormy seas. Now, common sense is going to tell you the heavier a ship is, the more massive it is, the more its displacement is, the less it's going to be bothered by heavy waves. But the newer generation of ships, I mean, like the USS Iowa, you know, or the Mighty Mo. I got to tour the Missouri multiple times, including a VIP tour when I lived in Hawaii. That's a massive ship, heavy steel all over the place, you know, armor belts and everything. That ship could go sail anywhere in the world and it wasn't bothered by storms. But the newer ships, the Arleigh Burkes, the Ticonderogas, especially the Independence and Freedom class littoral combat ships, they're very, very, very susceptible to the stormy seas. And they can reach a point where their combat effectiveness is severely impaired. All right, we're going to take another break here for commercials, and we'll be right back after these two words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Let's talk about the economic news. Gold has surged 3%. Remember, it got hammered down a little while ago, but it surged 3% after the Fed's first emergency rate cut since 2008. Now, that rate cut triggered another huge upsurge on the stock market today. I think the Dow ended something like 1178 up, which is not enough to erase the 4,000 loss that preceded it. But it's got to be making the investors happy. But will it last? I seriously doubt it, because they keep insisting that the downturn on the stock market is out of concern over the coronavirus, and that's not going to go away. Now, the fact that Biden swept Super Tuesday is considered a factor as well, where a lot of stocks linked to his policies are looking very, very attractive here. Okay, so consumers are being squeezed ahead of the coming recession. We all know it's on its way. And the U.S. two-year yield is collapsing like it was in 2007 and 2008. So it looks like the stock sell-off is far from done. See what happens tomorrow and Friday. Is the Fed ready for a recession? I seriously, seriously doubt it. Frank Curzio is out there saying that the coronavirus impact on markets is about to go from bad to worse. Now, Frank is the host of the Wall Street Unplugged podcast, and he joined SGT Report to discuss the worst week ever for the U.S. stock markets. Curzio also discussed what lies ahead, which is likely to be more economic and stock market carnage as COVID-19 spreads around the globe. Okay. The White House pledged to deliver 1 million coronavirus tests by Friday might be a little short. And yesterday when we reported on this, I expressed a certain degree of skepticism whether they could get it there. Although in today's press conference, they reiterated that claim. But apparently, the nation's public health labs could run up to 10,000 tests per day by the end of the week, according to figures provided by the Association of Public Health Laboratories. So this pledge to deliver 1 million coronavirus tests by Friday might be short by about 922,000. Which tells us again, these press conferences are more about perception control, image control. Don't want people panicking. Nobody wants a panic. I don't want to panic either. Again, be aware, be concerned. The Fed repo injections have hit a record level. The global contagion is negatively impacting the financial markets. Larry Summers is reporting 50 basis rate cut. Fed is running out of ammunition. Interest rate cuts and other policies can't fix a supply shock. Finally, the inbound China shipping docks are empty. No products arriving at the ports. But there are holiday bargains to be had. Airlines are slashing prices to fill empty cabins. Business class fares plummeting by up to 60%. Package deals falling by a third. And oh boy, can you get a good deal on those cruise ships right now. Because nobody wants to run the risk, first of all, of catching the coronavirus, or even if you don't catch it, being stranded at sea for 2 weeks with a subsequent loss of income from your job, or possibly losing your job itself here. Getting into immigration and refugees, Russia says Turkey is trying to push 130,000 refugees from Syria into Greece. The Greek authorities are trying to resist it, and they're being weaponized. 2/3 of those refugees that Turkey is pushing from temporary camps in Syria are Afghans, Iraqis, and Africans, not Syrians. Everybody. And now there's word out that Erdogan is emptying his prisons and sending them to the border as well. Castro did the same thing when they opened up Florida and said, any Cuban refugees who want to come on in, we will allow in. Castro went down to his prisons, he let all the prisoners go and said, here's a boat, 90 miles north. And that's one of the reasons why Florida has been such a hotbed of crime ever since. So the Greek forces are boldly defending the European Union's borders as Erdogan is accused of freeing prisoners to aid migrant invasion. Austria's chancellor is the only EU leader prepared to call out President Erdogan over the weaponization of the refugees. A poorly considered fix to prevent Syrian refugees flooding into Europe came undone for the EU as Erdogan opens Turkey's border to the west. Now, previously, the EU had actually paid him bribes to keep the refugees. They offered him a €1 billion bribe to keep them now, and he turned them down. So Brussels has kind of dropped the ball on this thing, but Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz was paying attention and rightly accused Erdogan's opening of the Turkey border as an attack on the European Union. Okay, we're going to take a phone call now from Robert in Illinois. Aloha, Robert. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. You hear me?
I hear you. You're on the air.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sorry. That beep is missing for some reason. You know, since you're on the Erdogan and the refugees, and I'm not sure if I called in the other day talking about this, but, you know, man, all right, let me get the words out. So there are no Syrian, we're getting a lot of fake news. The CNN in Turkey and so on and so forth. It's CNN in Turkey that sent a message out to all these alleged migrants that the borders are open, they can go into Europe. So that's part of the problem. Then the other part of the problem is what you just mentioned, that Erdogan is, as a matter of fact, letting people out of the prisons to send there. Not in any cases, any of these reporters out there interviewing people and so on, did they ever interview a Syrian? It's Iraqis, it's Afghanis, it's Somalis, it's Ethiopians. It's everybody but Syrians. So that's another part of the process. The other part of the process is they're actually aiding them. They're giving them rafts. Because who's asking? How are they getting over there? They're giving them rafts. They're giving them food. They're giving them clothing. They're giving them clothing from the Turkish military army. These people are showing up with gas. Oh yeah. Well, they're showing up with gas canisters. They're showing up with machetes. They're showing up with firearms. They're showing up ready to roll. They're actually doing this in the name of Allah. In fact, that's what they're screaming. See, Greece is totally on the defensive here. They are actually harming each other. They're like shooting each other, harming each other, beating each other up, so on and so forth, and saying, oh, look at the Greece police are doing to us. But it's all a lie. All this fake news is basically if we were going to get into fake news, here we are. This is the plethora of fake news. So Greece is in a jam. But Erdogan, again, his ultimate goal is to blackmail the European Union into backing his play into Syria, because he's on his own. He has a play, and he's been working up to this for several years. It's just been a matter of time to finally when he shows his true colors. But people have been watching him, and this is his play for that. Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. You know, Erdogan is trying to put pressure on Europe to come in and basically through NATO, you know, help them against Syria. But the problem is you've got all these entangled allegiances where supposedly Syria and Turkey are supposed to be friends, and they're not since that aborted coup d'etat against Erdogan. But you're absolutely right. This is an attempt to pressure Europe to come in on Turkey's side against Syria, because Turkey right now at least is standing alone while Syria has Russia helping them.
And meanwhile, all these people, all these alleged migrants, they're coming in with nice clothes. They got money. They got cell phones, probably better than yours and mine, Mike. And they're going into Greece. This is an occupation force. They're literally saying, get out of our way. Allah said, this is ours now. Get out of our way. That's the whole deal that's going on. It's an occupation. It's an invasion, so on and so forth. So, and it's all this PC culture around the world and the globalists and their immigration, take over countries and flooding them out and destroying them. This is part of the plan and whatever. They got their whole weaponizing. And if it wasn't for the last 20 years of what we've been doing in the Middle East with September 11th and everything we've been doing over there, none of this would have been made possible. None of this would have been made possible.
It's a mess over there. It's a mess over there with the United States going into all these countries, to try and control not necessarily the oil itself, but what currency the oil is being traded in.
Right. I was listening to your Mike Pence with the coronavirus thing. What's one funny thing was they start talking about airports. What are those TSA? The useless money laundering operation of the TSA, the useless organization there. They're still patting people down. So what if one person, they get sweat from one person, they're going to pass it on to the next?
Yes.
Does that make TSA null and void, or are they going to make sure they shove everyone through the scanners? How are they going to make that play? That's a good question to ask.
Well, see, those gloves the TSA wear are to protect the TSA workers, not to protect the passengers. They would have to change gloves for every single passenger, and I don't think they have that many gloves.
Yeah, that's the way any normal, logical person would think of that. But here's another thing. Today, somebody floated the question, because back in the China corona thing started breaking out around September, October 2019, but of course it was on a hush-hush. But, the person put the connection like this. You, as well as I, we've had callers calling various networks. We've had radio broadcasters come on the air, and they've got a cough or a sneeze, or they're just getting over something. And all in our certain areas, I'm sure the listeners out there know somebody of somebody or whatever, how many people have been sick with what we're just suspecting is the regular flu, but it's been a lot worse. It's taken a lot longer to recover the coughing, the congestion, the sneezing, the runny nose, and it's taken a lot longer whatnot. So if this thing was broken out here's the connection. It was broken out and on the hush-hush September and October of 2019 in China, probably corona, the virus itself, has been here in the United States since and around that same time, except the fact is, nobody knew or aware of it, so nobody's been testing for it. So we got to put that into play in our minds. I mean, it's probably already here. It's already been here for months and months and months. It's just now, now we just got the introduction.
It was probably being confused for the ordinary flu before.
Exactly, and that's, again, they floated that, and how many people thought of that? And I think that person was very astute to mention that. Now, the last thing I want to get you on here is, look, Afghanistan, Trump, the agreement with the Taliban, this peace agreement. Look, that is all positive, and he is, best to our knowledge. Let's think he's trying to do something positive, and there's no hanky-panky being involved here. That he's trying to get a peace agreement. He's trying to get the troops out. He's trying to stop. Why are we there? What have we been doing there? Many of your listeners know we've been guarding poppy fields. We've been guarding poppy fields for the pharmaceutical companies, right? As these poppies are being created into, right, and the drug dealers created into opioids and heroin, and it goes to the pharmaceuticals, and heroin is being trafficked all around the world while all these people make billions and billions of dollars, while the U.S. government, and this started on Obama, where they were getting paid to do this. Meanwhile, the Chinese are in the background digging out all the rare earth minerals under our same protection, 300,000 troops over there doing that. So basically what it comes down to is he's made an agreement with them and said, look, do you want to continue to be this? He's telling these people, the Taliban and those provinces, they're saying, do you want to continue to do this? Is this what you want? Because what if we turn around, we just back out with no agreements, no nothing? Those globalists, those people, those pharmaceutical companies with all the money are going to come here and they're going to take over 100%. There's not going to be any Americans here to be dividing between us and them, and next thing you know, you guys are all going to be in trouble. You guys are going to start getting your pandemics. You guys are going to start getting, murdered in mass or kicked out of your own homes in your own country. Do you want that? And they came to realize what is best for them in the long run, to make a deal with the United States, try and get some type of agreement to make this all boom. That way it'll keep those globalists that we all call globalists and oligarchs and whatnot out of the equation, because there's already an agreement between us. Now, what happened recently with this new strike, so much for his peace agreement. Look, they don't know what the strike was about. It could have been bad guys because immediately, as soon as the peace agreement was done, all of a sudden someone's throwing in missiles because they don't want a peace agreement, because they want to keep that.
No, the reason for
and so on.
Well, first of all, you understand the Taliban is opposed to the drug trade. When the Taliban was in charge of Afghanistan, they had all but eradicated the opium trade. If you were caught with a poppy, they'd take your hand off. A little draconian, but it did work. Okay, when the United States came on in, the poppies were blooming. There were bumper crops all over the place, and the heroin started flowing out of Afghanistan to the United States, also to Russia, which Russia is not happy about. And
Russia, China, Israel.
Yes.
Wherever there's, they can make drugs out of it or pharmaceuticals out of it. Definitely they make them into pills and straight heroin and the fentanyl and all that stuff.
Well, fentanyl is a synthetic. It doesn't start with the opium poppy. But the thing is, when the deal was signed last Saturday, everyone said, we're going to abide by it. But the first thing that happened is the Taliban said, we want a prisoner swap, and the Afghan government said no. And so the Taliban announced that they were going to resume offensive operations against the Afghan government, but not the United States. So that's what happened in Afghanistan. The Taliban attacked the Afghan security forces, and the United States came on in and attacked the Taliban for what they're claiming are defensive reasons. And so that peace agreement, it's not even worth the paper it was written on.
Well, let's just hope for good things. It would be good for all if we can finally get out of there. We're in a place we should have never been in there in the first place, under 1,000% false pretenses. Anybody listening in this audience, I guarantee, pretty much knows we're not in there because of some terrorist that is connected to September 11th. Absolutely untrue.
Absolutely.
So whatever. Anyway, thanks, Mike. Thanks for letting me vent and so on and so forth. Hopefully you caught something.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Lenny in California. And Lenny, I'm probably going to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Yes. First, I would like to talk about Erdogan and Dustin's comment earlier today about Erdogan holding all the cards when it comes to Europe. Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, Dustin, and I do like your comments. I like your call-ins. It's part of the reason I listen to the show. But there was just a few hours ago, there was a total fist fight in the Turkish parliament. And the Turkish Erdogan regime is against the opposition. And I'm thinking that the Turkish people are getting fed up. Now, we can say that Erdogan holds the cards, but my thing is, what cards are there? Are they a royal flush, or are they a full house? I'm tending to think it's more of a royal flush and the flushing of a turd that's about to begin. Sorry about the language. Now, to speak to Joe about the Soleimani assassination, you do understand the cosmic law of cause and effect, right?
Yes. Obviously.
Joe from Tennessee. Okay. So when you think it's okay to take other people's, I'll hold through the break if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I hear
No,
the music.
Hold through the break, and we'll be right back with our last segment after these two words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Lenny in California. And Lenny, if you could just sort of pick it up where you left off.
Yes, I was speaking about the cosmic law of cause and effect, and in reference to Joel's take on Soleimani. In fact, I would venture to say that Soleimani was a hell of a lot closer to where he was supposed to be than the United States is where they're supposed to be. And he was on a diplomatic mission carrying a letter from Saudi Arabia to Iran. The United States, via information from Israel, who ain't nobody's friend. I will repeat that, Joe, who are not anybody's friend. They can be national. You want to be a national? Some people may call me a black nationalist. But I know this much, Israel ain't nobody's friend. But anyway, to continue, like I said, Soleimani was a hell of a lot closer where he was supposed to be than the United States is where they're supposed to be. So you want to get into going around taking people's generals out. Let's talk about the so-called Dark Prince of the CIA that was shot down over Afghanistan. And I know the Taliban didn't have the whereabouts or the know-how to do it. According to some Russian sources, they supplied Iran with the information, and Iran struck back. But let's talk about the bases that were struck in Iraq as a result of killing Soleimani and all the American soldiers that were injured as a result of that. See, this is cause and effect. You can do what you want, but don't get mad when something comes back at you. That's just the law of it. And you know, as I just want to say, whether you understand it or not, you can't duck karma. You can put it out, but just be prepared to take it when it comes back at you. And that's all I have to say about it, Mr. Rivera.
Well, you make some very, very good points there, and we're going to thank you for the phone call and let you go here and get back to some little bit of news clips here before the end of the show. The scandal-ridden Diocese of Buffalo, New York has filed for bankruptcy protection, thus enabling it to shelter not only its financial assets, but also many of the facts about the abusive priests. Now, with cases from alleged victims of clerical sex abuse mounting and insurance companies vowing not to pay, on Friday, Buffalo joined more than 20 other dioceses by filing for bankruptcy protection. And Bishop Edward Scharfenberger, apostolic administrator of the diocese, told reporters the move would result in fair resolutions. He said, quote, "My hope is that going forward, regardless of the mistakes we have made, regardless of the suspicions that may rightfully have been raised about the way things were done, going forward, we're going to see a lot of action that will result in very fair resolutions as much as we can." In other words, the cover-ups will continue. All right, the Arizona House of Representatives has passed a bill banning trans athletes from youth sports. I think that's about time. Maybe it's time for a third category: men's sports, women's sports, trans sports. Maybe some other name on that third one. Virginia's governor supports killing babies after birth. West Virginia's governor signs a law protecting them. Anyway, this one's a little sick. There was a school over in Brooklyn that is handing out drag queen and training stickers to 4-year-olds. There's the music. Time for me to get out of here and get something useful done for the rest of the day. And please stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of RBN. Please spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. I cannot stress how important it is that you help us out right now. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.